Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Jordyn and welcome to another complete author backlist series video. This is a series I do on my channel where I read all of the books that an author has published and basically decide if I like their books and want to continue picking up that author's books in the future. This week, the author that I will be diving into is Ashley Winstead. She has 3 books out currently. For the most part, they've gotten very good reviews and I feel like I'm going to really like them. I just haven't gotten around to them yet, but now is the time. The first book that Ashley Winstead wrote and published is In My Dreams I Hold a Knife. This, from my understanding, is a dark academia murder mystery type book where we're following one character who's going back to her college reunion. And the backstory there is she had this group of friends. One of the friends died, and I'm guessing the wrong person was convicted of that, and our main character is going to find out what actually happened. It does sound like a very similar plot to The It Girl by Ruth Ware, which I have already read. I generally liked. This came out after In My Dreams, so I will try not to hold any similarities between the two books against this one. But this is the book that I have seen the most polarized reviews about out of all 3 of this author's books so far. Early reviews of this book were so good. People were raving about it. It was on some people's favorite books of the year last year when it was published. And then after it got so much hype, as more and more people started to read it, I saw a lot of people saying it is overhyped, it is not as good as people were claiming, and it's more of your very standard mystery thriller. So I'm going to go into this one with very tempered expectations and not expect this to blow my mind, but hopefully be a well-crafted, well put together mystery. Then Ashley Winstead's second book that she published is a totally different genre. This is an adult contemporary romance. I haven't seen as many reviews for this book compared to her other 2. It sounds like this book is actually pretty political, and the criticisms that I have seen about this book say that that's the part of the romance that they didn't prefer and they didn't want that included. I'm hoping that I have the opposite opinion. I do like romances that have other elements included in them, especially more serious and emotional topics. So I'm hoping that the political aspects in here are that, and that I connect to that part of the book as well. And hopefully this is a romance that I end up enjoying. Romance is not typically my favorite genre, but every once in a while I find a gem. And then the third book that I'll be reading is Ashley Winstead's newest release, released this year. It is Last Housewife, and all I know about this book is that it sounds like it is very dark, very disturbing, and people are loving it. So I don't want to know anything else about the plot of this book. I'm gonna go in fairly blind, but being that this is Ashley Winstead's 3rd published book and it is getting such great reviews, expectations are pretty high. So that is the plan for this video. I am going to read these books in publication order. So I'll start with In My Dreams I Hold a Knife. I will check in when I'm a little bit into this book and can give you a little bit more of a synopsis and my initial feelings about this book. Okay, it is later the same day. I have been listening to In My Dreams I Hold a Knife on and off throughout the day. I am about 45% of the way in, and I wish I had more to say about it. It does have a very standard mystery thriller setup in where we're following the main character in present day and in the past, and the main character is trying to figure out what really happened like 10 years in the past. This one, like I mentioned before, follows our main character who is going back to her college for her 10-year reunion. She's reconnecting with all of her friends, and one of her friends did die when they were in college. She was murdered. Someone was convicted of that murder and put away, and now when the friends were brought back for the reunion, they were gathered together, and basically someone told all of those friends, like, I know all of you guys have secrets, and I don't think that what everyone thinks happened to that girl that night is what actually happened, and the truth will come out, basically. So now all of these friends are like questioning each other and figuring out what really happened leading up to that girl's death, and it just feels very gossipy, like we're just learning about all of these people's relationships. And of course it's a co-ed group of people, so some of the people are in relationships and they ended up cheating on each other with the other people, and then trying to figure out who knew about like all that cheating. It's just not the kind of drama that I particularly like reading about or that I find interesting. I don't really like our main character. I do know I've seen a lot of people say that this main character is just unbearable, and she's supposed to be. She's introduced right at the beginning as like she thinks she's perfect. She has planned out her entire life and she's met all of those goals. She just made partner at the law firm that she works at, and she's like the youngest partner of all time. And even when we go back to her college days, she was just very calculating, and like she only was friends with some people because of the status they brought her or the opportunities they brought her. So she is not painted in a very good light, so it's obviously hard to root for her to like solve the mystery. And I don't feel like we have a ton of information about Heather, the girl who was killed, either, to want to root for her death to have justice brought to it. So I don't know. I predict this being a 3-star book. I'm sure there will be some kind of twist at the end that I don't see coming, but that's largely due to the fact that I'm not theorizing anything about this book because I just don't really care that much. I'm just gonna finish it to finish it. Hopefully, fingers crossed, that's not the case and something changes my mind throughout the rest of this book. But so far, those are my mediocre thoughts. I am on sprints right now on Jessie's channel from Reading with Jess. She does sprints every Monday night, so I am going to continue listening to my audiobook while on these sprints. How much longer do I have left? I have less than 6 hours to get through, and I'm listening right now on 2.25 times speed. So that's less than 3 hours left of listening time. Plus, if I start reading physically along with listening, I could probably bump that speed up and finish it even faster. So I think that's what I'm gonna try to do. I also want to paint my nails tonight because that is something I don't do very often, but I want to. So I'm gonna do that. I will check back in once I've finished the book and hopefully have better thoughts to tell you, but we'll see. Okay, hello, update time. It is the next day now. It is well into the afternoon. I have some updates because I did finish In My Dreams I Hold a Knife. I wish I had more to say about it. When I updated you last night, I think I was at like 45% or something. I was not really vibing with it. Once it got to like the 75% mark, things had picked up quite a bit and I was interested to see how everything was going to be wrapped up. So that was a good sign. I was invested in the mystery. The characters did become a little bit clearer in my head the further I went along. So all good things. But once I got to the end of this book, I just felt like it was a little anticlimactic. And not because there wasn't a climax, there definitely was. It's just the type of book where like no matter what the solution is, it's going to be fine. I don't know, I find myself having this opinion a lot with murder mysteries where there is a cast of characters where everyone has secrets, everyone can be made to look guilty, because when you get to the end, it has to be one of them. And even if there are like twists and reveals, or maybe it's not just one of them, it's multiple of them, or whatever can be done to twist it up a little bit, at the end of the day, it's gonna make sense to the story that's been told. And for some reason, I find that unsatisfying sometimes. I'm not really sure why, but I've just had this feeling a lot coming out of murder mysteries where I'm like, yeah, it was good, but I don't really feel anything about it. So that is unfortunately where I'm landing with this book. I'm gonna give it 3 stars. There was nothing atrocious about it, nothing that I hated, nothing that I disagreed with, but nothing that really stands out to me. I don't really understand some of the rave reviews that I did see this get right when it came out. I don't know if it's because it was one of the first like dark academia type murder mystery books to come out in recent years, whereas there have been a few to follow and people have just been getting bored with that trope, but the first time they read it they really liked it. I don't know, but it didn't stand out too much for me. I don't think I'm gonna remember it for that much longer. I do think it is going to really blend together in my head with The It Girl, since I also read that fairly recently. But I am holding out hope that Ashley Winstead's other books have gotten better, and I think since they are different genres and very different vibes, there's a lot of opportunity there for me to still really enjoy books that she's written. And so with that, I am on to Fool Me Once. I have just barely started this one on audio. This is a romance, and it kicks off with a really funny scene, in my opinion. I don't read a lot of funny books, so I don't know if some people would find this like cringy or cheesy or not funny, but our main character is waking up the day after being a bridesmaid in a wedding, and the wedding was at Disney World or Disneyland, and all of the bridesmaids are dressed up as like Disney characters, and they're doing the walk of shame the next day through the Disney park dressed as Disney princesses, and parents and kids are coming up to them like wanting to take pictures or whatever, but their makeup is all smeared, so the parents are like, oh, those are not real Disney princesses, walk away kids. And I'm not really sure how this is going to feed into the rest of the story, but I find it a pretty funny intro and definitely not something I've read before. Our main character is a super serious, like business focused woman. She is a communications director at a women-run electric car company, which I think is going to be a very major focus of this book, is her and her career and her goals. And the inciting incident for the rest of the book and the romance is she just got word that the person that she has to convince to like pass this energy bill is someone that she knows from her past, like an ex-boyfriend that she did not end on good terms with. So it's gonna be like an enemies, well, like a lovers to enemies to lovers type romance. Not usually my favorite trope, but we will see how it works in this context. I am going to go ahead and keep listening to this. The audiobook is pretty short, so I'm also hoping to fly through this book as quickly as I did the first one. It is like 3 o'clock in the afternoon right now. I have some errands and chores to do before I go pick up my kids, so I'm going to try and speed, clean, and grocery shop and do stuff while I'm listening to this book before I get my kids and hang out with them for the evening. So I will probably check in once I've finished this next book, unless anything really major happens in the middle of it that I need to update you on, but I will go ahead and keep moving on it. This lighting is better than expected. Okay, time for an update. I have finished Fool Me Once, flew through it as expected, and I have a lot of things to say about it. This book is a romance, like I mentioned, and it's very political. I would even say the politics come before the romance in like quantity throughout this book, or like how major it is to the plot of this book. So right off the bat, I will say that if you do not like politics in your books, in your fiction, and specifically left-leaning politics, because I do think this book is very heavy-handed in the political messaging, and even in like the subtle kind of side comments from these characters, we get a very clear viewpoint of what their political beliefs are and the fact that they think they should just be everyone's beliefs. If you don't want to read about that, then this is not the book for you. I, however, quite enjoyed all of the political aspects of this book. My own political views are something that in the relatively recent past I've been getting to know further. I mean, as everyone does, I think that's something that continually evolves, and you kind of have to check in with yourself, and especially in relation to whatever the political climate is around you. But as I've become more and more comfortable with myself, my beliefs, and how I want to address those beliefs going forward and outwardly. I've become more and more supportive of it being in fiction because I am of the belief that politics are ingrained in almost everything. And I do think it's a relatively unique spin on a romance because I have not read a ton of political romances. The two that come to mind that I would compare to this book are Yes, No, Maybe So by I think Becky Albertalli and Aisha Saeed. I remember that being a young adult, more of a coming of age story, but a little bit of a romance element about two teenagers who go campaigning door to door together. That book is more diverse and more about like defying familial expectations, cultural expectations, and like stereotype expectations, and is more young adult in its writing style, but reminded me of this book because of how those two people were coming together to campaign. Just like the main characters in this book have to come together to campaign for this green energy bill that they're trying to pass. And then it also reminds me of Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. That's a male-male romance between the Prince of England, or maybe the Prince of Wales or something, and the son of the first female president of the United States. So that one is more global in scope, but that one also had a clear emphasis in trying to turn a conservative state blue. I actually think it was Texas, and in this one they are also trying to pass a blue bill in Texas. So that's where those similar vibes came from. Again, I liked all of that. I thought it was fine. I was relatively invested in that part of the storyline. What I was not invested in is the romance. I liked your main character well enough, but the love interest, the guy, I have no idea what exactly we were supposed to like about him, or if we were just supposed to assume that because he had history with the main character, we were supposed to know that there was actual like care and love lying under the surface. I don't know. I just don't think he was an overly kind character. I question some of his decisions and how he reacted to a few different situations. So because I wasn't all in on the love interest and the romance part of the book, I don't think I can give this much more than 3 stars because it is a romance book. So I think that is what I'm going to land on. The only other thing I have to say is that I'm still pretty shocked that this is the same author as In My Dreams I Hold a Knife because they are just such different tones. This was a pretty light and fluffy romance book, and again with like pushing the political agenda, I didn't see really any of that in My Dreams. That one was much more formulaic of a murder mystery. So just completely different, which I find very impressive that an author can write 2 books back to back, completely different genres. And I don't even know what I'm about to get into with The Last Housewife, because that is of course the book that I'm going to be reading next. And actually I have started it. I'm only a little bit into the audiobook. Already the first couple chapters of this book have me hooked more than the previous 2 books. So that's a great sign. The story is compelling to me. The writing is intriguing. It definitely has more of a dark undertone, and there are some dark and twisted secrets that I'm about to uncover through this book, which is going to be interesting. The basic plot of this book is we are following our main character named Shay, who lives a very lavish lifestyle, it appears. She has a rich husband, I believe. She spends most of her days at home as a housewife, but she very clearly has a very sinister past that she is like not wanting to remember. She's not wanting to let herself go back there. She has removed herself from her former life and everyone attached to it. The only string that she still has to that former life is a podcast that she listens to. It's a true crime podcast, and the host is one of her childhood friends. And so for some reason, this podcast is kind of her guilty pleasure that she lets herself listen to for nostalgic reasons. And then all of a sudden on a new episode that she's listening to, he says the name of someone that he thinks was murdered, and it was one of her best friends from college. So all of a sudden she starts reeling because of this mysterious past that she has. She doesn't think that it was a suicide for the friend, which is what the police have ruled the death as, and the podcast host also thinks things are fishy and that it was likely a murder and not a suicide. So now our main character is going back to her college town. She's re-entering all of like the bad memories, all of the secrets she has, with the hopes of discovering what really happened to her friend. And I am so interested to see where we go from here. What are we gonna uncover? I have heard a few things about what this book deals with in terms of like trigger warnings and certain types of reading vlogs this has been included in. So I think I know the general direction that this book is gonna go, but I'm prepared to be a little disturbed, but I'm interested, very interested. So that is the plan, is I'm gonna go ahead and finish this book as soon as I possibly can. I'm hoping that this will be my favorite out of all of Ashley Winstead's books. It's the one that I've seen the most unchallenged hype for sure. So I hope that bodes well for me, and I'm excited to compare this book to Ashley Winstead's 2 previous books. So I'll be back with an update once I have finished. Okay, good news. I just finished The Last Housewife, and I'm happy to say that this is my favorite book that I've read of all of Ashley Winstead's, which is what I was expecting, it's what I was hoping for, and I'm glad that it did live up to my expectations. I am very glad that I was accurately prepared for what this book is, because it is quite different in tone from her previous 2 books, and it's much darker and more disturbing, I would say, than your average mystery thriller. Which might sound like a weird thing to say, because a lot of times thrillers have to do with like death and murder and gruesome crimes, right? But this book is on another level. It does deal with sexual content and crimes and cults, which for someone relatively sheltered like me is disturbing to read about. This book does have content warnings included at the beginning of the book. It lists suicide, rape, physical violence, sexual violence, trauma, self-harm, misogyny, gender essentialism, and drug use, all as things that are included in this book, which I really appreciate that it puts in here. And I think it's important just to put out there that if you're going to go into this book, just be warned that that is all included in here. I did see a review on Goodreads from someone who said this was not as dark and disturbing as it's been hyped to be. And I'm not here to say that this is like the craziest story of all time or the most disturbing thing I've ever read. One, because I'm definitely not the person to make that claim. I don't read disturbing things in general, so I have no way to gauge how extreme this is comparatively to other thriller and horror books out there. Two, because people respond to things differently. If you're not triggered at all by sexual violence and violence against women, then this probably won't have that kind of extreme effect on you. But if that is something you're sensitive to, then this would be extremely harmful to read, or could be. So it's worth putting that warning out there, because if somebody picks this up expecting their run-of-the-mill thriller, they could have a really rough time with it. So aside from all of that, the story in this book was extremely compelling. It does have to do with this woman searching for her friend that she has a mysterious past with and trying to figure out what did she get into. Was her death a suicide or a murder, or what happened? As well as explaining her own past. What happened to her? Why did it happen to her? How is she coping with that? And how does it still affect her in her everyday life? I found that all very, very interesting. I have not read a lot of cult books. I imagine that that topic is interesting in general, and I would probably be intrigued by a lot of books with the same general premise, because I do find it very fascinating how people get lured into cults. But also just something about the way this book was written made it addictive to keep reading. I was equally interested in what was going on in present day, because our main character was putting herself into some pretty dangerous situations to get information. But also the flashback chapters were super, super intriguing, because this main character was also in a very crazy situation when she was in college. So I always think that's a really good sign in a thriller, when the author can make you equally interested in the multiple timelines, if there are multiple. And in my opinion, the only part that left me wanting a little bit more was the ending of this book. Not because it wasn't action-packed, it was, and it was generally satisfying. It just pretty much wrapped up the way I expected it to. Nothing overly shocking happened within the ending, in my opinion, for how crazy of a story this is to begin with. And maybe that is because this book starts on like level 8, you know, and if you're expecting it to get to level 10 or above by the ending, expectations are really high. I don't know, but I think I'm gonna land at a 4-star rating for this. And in conclusion, for Ashley Winstead, I will absolutely be keeping an eye out for what she does next. The fact that all 3 of these books were so different makes me so intrigued to see where else she can go. What other genres and subgenres can she dive into? What other stories can she tell? And I don't know if I would call her an auto-buy author at this point, but she's definitely on my radar, and if she puts out something with an interesting synopsis or that gets as rave reviews as this book does, then I'm sure I will continue to pick up her books in the future. Also, I will say that I have seen Ashley Winstead be very engaging on social media, which is something I personally appreciate from authors. I know sometimes it can encroach a little bit too much into like book reviewer, book influencer spaces. We don't want authors always reading things about their books, but I do appreciate when an author takes the time to engage with their fans, to respond to positive reviews, and really make it feel like they appreciate the book community. And I do think that Ashley Winstead does that, so that's pretty cool. I have seen her on a live for my friend Marisha's Instagram. She does live book looks inspired by book covers, and she had Ashley Winstead on one of her lives where she got to kind of interview her and ask her questions about her books. And I just think that's cool that she was willing to do that. So I wanted to throw that out there too, that I do think author personality and engagement can positively influence my opinion on authors and my willingness to continue picking books up by them. And I do think that is a positive notch for Ashley Winstead in this case. So with that, that concludes my Ashley Winstead reading vlog. Please let me know if you have tried any of Ashley Winstead's books, what you thought of them, and if you haven't, are you planning on picking any of them up? Let me know if there are any other authors you have in mind that I might enjoy all of their books if I haven't read them, and I could do a similar video like this in the future for. Other than that, I don't think I have anything else, so thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in my next one.